Peter, we're rocking and rolling. How are you today?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. I've been looking forward to this one for a while, Peter. You and I have had some conversations off camera where you've been showing me a little bit of your discoveries and some of your interesting work that you've found and related to the crop circles. And Karen Alexander was the one that said, you might want to reach out to Peter because he's found some amazing things that would kind of be right in your wheelhouse of the geometry and some of the more mysterious aspects of the crop circle phenomenon. Yeah, thank you to Karen for kind of connecting us. And I wanted to just see, maybe you could just tell the audience maybe who you are and what your background is and how you sort of got involved with the crop circle phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, Peter Van Den Burg. I am from the Netherlands originally, but I live in Norway. My background is not. I work in healthcare, but it's not anything math related at all. But I always had an interest in music, especially and harmonic ratios in that. And it was in 2007 that a Norwegian filmmaker had made a documentary on crop circles, and this was shown on a nationwide broadcaster. And I just accidentally stumbled in the middle of the documentary, and I thought, what is this? And so that was my introduction to crop circles. I must have known about them before because I remember the Led Zeppelin album cover,
That's
but
right.
it never really hooked me at that time. I was younger then, of course. But then in 2007, it really began to make sense to me, and especially the geometry of it, that and the way how people like, for example, Michael Glickman and others were working with geometry. And I thought, this is interesting. I want to know everything about it, but especially also the feeling that this is something that I can understand. This is something that I can sink my teeth in. I never really trusted the numbers in mathematics for a long time, but shapes and ratios and proportions, I understood. And so that it kind of snowballed from there.
Mhm. Very good.
Yeah. I think about 2 years later, I was very fortunate that my brother sent me a copy of the AutoCAD drawing program. And that has been a tremendous help for me to really discover and to learn how to work with geometry.
So I know a lot of the main geometers within the crop circle phenomenon have used AutoCAD to sort of pump the information in and then to really use it as a valuable tool for uncovering some of the hidden geometries within the crop circles. I know Alan Brown did that, and I'm
Yeah.
sure some of the other main geometers have done that as well. I know Scott Onstott, who I'm actually speaking with later today, did that as well. And so AutoCAD is, I've never used it, but apparently it's a fantastic tool for kind of uncovering some of the hidden geometries within the crop formations.
It's funny in that it is not really the same as drawing on paper, because it is a computer program is, it either fits or it doesn't fit. It's ruthlessly precise, which is really fun if things click into place. But many ratios that are more ambiguous, like, for example, sevenfold geometries, or those shapes are often they work better on paper. So what I'm doing now, I've been doing, just computer work for years, but for the last 5 or 6 years or so, I also do a lot on paper as well, so that I can get the feel of both of them. And I think that also gave a new dimension to working with geometry, to working with crop circles. A totally different approach, and some things work better on a computer, and some things work better on paper. It's great to have the opportunity to have the best of both in that sense. Yeah.
Okay,
So
great.
no, you showed something from GeoGebra, the program.
So GeoGebra is an online geometry program that we use in just standard Euclidean geometry from like what I teach my students. It's a fantastic program, and you can do a lot of great geometry work with that program. And I've reconstructed a lot of Alan Brown's geometric discoveries within GeoGebra, and it calculates accuracy to I think maybe like 13 or 15 decimal places. So you can get pretty good accuracy, or you can at least confirm the accuracy of guys like Alan Brown, and he's done some astonishing work. You and I have talked about that.
No,
You're
yeah,
fully aware of Alan's work, and when you start to do that stuff, it's another layer of this phenomenon that becomes undeniable, and it becomes like there's design aspects within the crop circles that are only revealed after you've done a little bit of this legwork. Can you maybe, before we get into this one crop circle that we're going to talk about today,
Mhm.
could you maybe speak to that a little bit about the design and sort of these hidden relationships within there and how profound you feel
Yeah.
that is?
What I've been very interested in the last couple of years is ratios in areas, affected areas. So you have a given crop circle, and then you have uh, a certain amount of flattened crop, and found that if you that if you if you calculate the total area of flattened crop in a given crop circle, that is oftentimes also give additional meaning or harmonic ratios at least, which really was a Pandora's box for me, uh, because this is something that you don't see right away. We have this instant recognition of when we look at ratios in size. If you see two circles, one in a 2-to-1 ratio, for example, we recognize that immediately, but we don't have that same recognition when we compare areas. But the circle makers or the crop circles design seems to have that ability to play with that as well. And I have found it very fascinating.
Yeah, and that is something that you opened my eyes to. That wasn't a relationship that I had known previous. That's one of the great things about looking into the crop circle phenomenon. There's so many layers to this that once you start digging in, like as soon as you think you've kind of got it licked, there's somebody else that's been looking at something else, a different angle at it, and they're finding meat on the bone there, which is endlessly fascinating. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to kind of dig into this crop formation that you've sent to me. We've gone over a couple together, but I wanted to kind of do this one first because I think this is a very interesting one. So why don't I go ahead and pull this one up and let's just talk about it for a little bit, and then let's start to reveal some of the underlying geometries that you've discovered here. All right. So let me know when you can see this one, Peter.
There it is.
Okay. So maybe first for the audience, can you tell us maybe when this one popped up? Was this 2000? And where is this? And what are we looking at?
The location is called Everleigh Ashes in England. Actually, I almost assume that it is Wiltshire, but I'm quite sure about that. But it's from the year 2000. I think and another aspect of crop circles design is how to see how they evolve over time. I think the 1990s were the transition from the 1989 to 1990, with the addition of straight lines was, that opened up the crop circle phenomenon to such an extent, and then you had that whole decade with all these amazing designs. Um, the transition from the 90s to the 2000s wasn't that intense, perhaps. But I think if you're going to have a closer look at formations from that period, I think you can. There's a lot of exciting things to discover there. What we're looking at here is quite unique in that it incorporates a tumulus in the design. Other than that, it would appear as a kind of traditional quintuplet design, one for the type of designs that Alan Brown, for example, worked a lot on. We can see this division into the satellite circles are divided into 4 sections. That refers back to a crop circle from, I believe, 1989 as well. So there's a lot of exciting things going on here. It's quite unique in that sense, especially that it is placed around a tumulus.
So maybe we should just clarify what the tumulus is for the audience here, because I didn't know what this was.
It's a man-made structure from I guess Neolithic times.
So we're talking about this middle mound here in the middle of the crop circle. That's called the tumulus, and this is a man-made structure. We find these all over the place. I know there's many Native American Indian mounds in the United States, especially here in Florida, where I'm located.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these things.
Yeah, I have no. I really shouldn't be like. I have no knowledge to speak about the historical aspects of these objects, but I believe that it's quite possible that they come from the same time period, in Native American history or European history. I have no idea. But this is what it is. Many of these monuments were dug out in the 19th century, 18th century, especially when the agriculture in Europe and in England really intensified. But many of them are also preserved, and nowadays, I guess most of them are protected monuments. But I don't know the specifics about these locations, about this specific location.
Okay. I do have a question. This is something I'm just noticing now. I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but I'm noticing a couple grape shots up here.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that for a second? I don't know if you and I have talked about this.
No, this has not been something of my that I've looked at in this specific design. There is this kind of this small ring inside that ring as well.
Here,
I'm not sure. I think they were added at some later point, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned we have a ring around the tumulus, and then we have the 4 circles that seem to be sectioned off into 4 quadrants within those satellite circles. So this is sort of your classic Celtic cross. Alan Brown looked at I think over 50 of these back in the early 2000s, going back into the the 80s, looking at the geometry within these things. So is there anything else you want to tell us about this crop formation before we start maybe looking at some of the underlying geometry?
I think the quintuplet or this kind of this cross design, apart from the single circle or a ring circle, I think it's probably one of the most used concepts in crop circle design. Although it's not really that recognizable to modern day crop circles. We had one this year, for example, so they still pop up over time, but they were much more frequent during the 80s. And then when that big transition came after 1990, they kind of receded to the background, but they always come back, every other year or something. There's always, they keep popping up, but there are quite a lot of them over the years. Yeah. I think it's one of the most used crop circle designs.
Okay. All right. Do you want to start to talk a little bit about some of the underlying geometry on this picture, or do you want me to pull up the other one of the silhouette?
Yeah, you can. Please do. Please pull up the picture.
Okay, let's pull up the silhouette here of the geometry. So this is what we're looking at, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
So tell everybody what we're kind of looking at here.
Okay, so this this does not really explain the underlying geometry in a traditional way where you draw straight lines and have figure out the size of the satellites by finding harmonic ratios and size. What we're looking at here is areas standing crop inside the ring, and then that value is converted to a square, and that has a meaningful relationship to the design as a whole. So if we take the one on the left, we can see the design of the crop circle, and then we can see a blue square and a blue circle. Now that the circle, the blue circle and the blue square have equal area, and what they represent is the area of standing crop inside the ring of the formation. And in this first drawing, I did not include the central circle or the area of the tumulus. And what if we convert that value to a square, it's going to have, that square is going to have equal circumference as the inner radius of the ring flattened crop.
All right. So let me see if I can just sort of re-explain this so that I know this and then maybe the audience knows this. So what you're saying here is that all the shaded area of this crop formation, the silhouette here, that's all flattened crop. And then on the inside, this is all standing crop where the white is inside this ring. And you're saying if you take the area of all the standing crop and you take that area and you convert it into a square. So you have it, you can reverse engineer the side lengths of a square doing that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you have your blue square here that you've constructed. And then you're also saying that if you take the flattened crop and you take that area and you create a circle.
No. In this case, we talked about, often we talked about several different formations, and often the flattened crop also has a certain relationship with the underlying structure. But in this case, it really is the standing crop that was the most important. There is a ratio with the flattened crop as well. If it's not in this drawing, I can explain it. If you pull up the photo again.
Okay, let me go back to the photo. It's right here.
Okay, so you see this circular trim line that goes around the tumulus, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If you convert the area of flattened crop, so the ring and the 4 satellites, and you convert that to a circle, you'll end up with a circle that kind of falls in between the 2 tire tracks of that circular trim line, which is not a perfect circle, but it's just to show how beautiful, harmonic these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That was the flattened crop. But what this one particularly made so fascinating was the area of standing crop in the design. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to this picture because I want to make sure I understand this. So the standing crop here, you've converted the area of a square, and then you've also taken that standing crop and you've made the blue circle and the blue square.
That was the circle. This was just to get that impression of how big these things are. But it is the square that is the most important figure in this context.
Now, before we go any further, the standing crop is minusing the area of the tumulus in the center, correct?
Correct.
So we're not including the area of this inner circle, the tumulus here. So all the standing crop inside the flattened crop ring, but outside the tumulus. And so you've created this blue square here. So that's really what we're looking at, okay?
Well, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's keep going.
The concept of a squared circle, is something that is often discussed in crop circle designs. There's just this concept about this impossible construction of a squared circle. The square represents the physical realm and what is measurable, and the physical realm. Well, the circle represents the spiritual and the unknowable. The circumference or the area of a circle cannot be calculated perfectly because of the irregular value of pi. So the squared circle is kind of this
It's the duality, right?
yeah, and this exercise, a spiritual exercise or a geometric exercise that kind of try to reconciliate this duality. All right, so this is common used in option designs, and in this case, it presents something really specific, that the inner radius of the ring that connects the four satellites has equal circumference as that blue square.
So the inner radius of the inner ring, are we talking about this line right here, this inner ring right here?
Correct.
Or that line that goes in the middle of the flattened ring?
No, it is this is the boundary of flattened crop and standing. It's not
Okay, so the boundary here. So this ring right here. So if we take the radius from the center to here.
Yep.
All right, and we reverse engineer the area of a circle.
It is about the circumference.
The circumference.
We have found the square by using the area inside that circle, but it is the circumference that in this case is used as a reference. It is
so the circumference is matching the perimeter of that square?
Correct.
All right. So let's just so for the audience sake. So the perimeter of this square that we got from the area of the standing crop minus the tumulus will equal the circumference of the circle that is calculated by this inner ring that separates the flattened from the standing crop. Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, that seems unlikely, right? So that's a design feature of this crop circle that seems very precise, and you're not going to find that unless you do some work to uncover that.
No, it's completely invisible. Just try. You need to work with the geometry to get there. Yeah.
Okay. So that's another layer of this design that's showing sort of this relationship between the squared circle. And this is something I've talked about on the podcast a lot. I've had experts come on that have uncovered this sort of thing, where it explains sort of the duality between the seen and the unseen, like the feminine and the masculine. And as you said, it's a geometric exercise, a philosophical exercise that people have they've spent, their lives trying to uncover the secrets between squaring the circle.
Yeah.
This was an exercise, I think it was outlawed in France at a certain point in time because people were just losing their minds and wasting so much time trying to square the circle. And this is one example that's popped up of a geometric puzzle that's somewhat been solved over and over again in different formations. Is that correct?
Crop circles, it's so often used in crop circle design that you can trust to look for it in almost any given crop circle. It's not necessarily always, but it's very, very commonly used.
It's consistent enough.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Why is that? Yeah. I don't know. I think the squared circle with equal circumference has this astronomical relationship with the size of the Earth and the Moon. He asked Scott about it because he knows all about it as well. Yeah. It's a very often used concept of circle design.
Okay, so that's amazing. That's a very interesting find there. And we should probably also say to the audience here, you've done this in multiple different crop circles. We're just looking at one right now. You've done this multiple times where you found this connection between flattened crop and standing crop and converted it into circles and squares to show areas, perimeters, and circumference that match to a high degree of accuracy. So we're just looking at one right now.
Yeah. If you're going to work with ratios, if you're going to draw geometry, you have certain ratios and size that we find meaningful or harmonic. Obviously, some of that is going to be expressed in ratios and areas as well. But in a crop circle like this, it is unlikely that these things come as a natural consequence or are just coincidental, because they become so intrinsic to to the design and the expression of the idea. It is something that is intentionally and purposefully used here. I find that fascinating because I don't think that we have a clue on how to design anything from that premise.
Right. Yeah, that's I agree. That's, I mean, I'm not into design. You know, I'm not a graphic designer, but that seems something that's highly unlikely and highly improbable that it would just be a phenomenon of someone creating a design like this. So,
Right.
okay, point well taken. Let's look at this second one over here because this one's
Yeah.
slightly different.
It is the same idea, but now I included the area of the tumulus.
Okay.
And now the squared circle is now made by the outer radius of that ring. So we
So
have
now we're talking about this outer ring here that separates the enclosure. So now you're taking this radius here, and the square that you've drawn here is to the size of the standing crop, but now we're including the tumulus on the inside, correct?
correct.
Okay, keep going.
So the whole design, the size of that ring is determined by the tumulus. It's not just that the circle was just superimposed over the tumulus for whatever reason you may want to look for. It is also that the size of that ring, how broad that ring is defined by how big the tumulus is and how the radius is of that ring. Everything is minutely related to one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are we matching the circumference with the perimeter of the square, or is it the areas?
So this is I'm talking about the circumference of the circle, just as with the first example, the same thing goes for the.
Okay, so now we're matching the circumference of this ring that runs around the outside, going all the way around. The circumference of that circle will match the perimeter of the square. So you take all the sides, add it up, it gives you the perimeter.
So
Let me ask you a question, and I don't know if you have this off the top of your head. Do you know what to what percentage degree of accuracy this is? I mean, is it 99 point?
no. It's I have not figured it out. I don't think it is in the same range of accuracy as, for example, many of Ellen Brown's examples are. But because my idea of this is that you need measurement in the field to say anything about it. Because how I reconstruct the crop circle, that has to do with your kind of your traditional approach of working with straight lines and circular lines, and then that work with areas comes afterward. But it appears to me when I see something like this, it is that we reconstruct them the other way around. We are looking for these ratios in size, but it is really the ratios in areas that whoever designed it used as his starting. So I think for me, it becomes quite arbitrary to talk about 99.99 or 99.97 or something. Or 99.5 for that matter. I don't think it is about accuracy alone. I think there are the three transcendentals, the good, beauty, and true. And accuracy, that is true, but you also have what is beautiful and what is good. And I think the squared circle, if you approach it purely as a way of defining the most accurate measurement of the value of pi, then accuracy is your only measure. But if you approach it as a spiritual exercise, the other two transcendentals also will play a role in that. The design has to be beautiful, and the design has to be, I love it when a crop circle has this kind of coherent approach to this, such as this, and then how accurate it is. I'm not so occupied with that. I think we need measurements in the field. Some people should do that. But it's very
Right.
rare that people, we don't do that at all anymore. And especially with these, we only have a handful of photos, from Lucy Pringle or Stephen Alexander, but they are often difficult to use as your template. Nowadays, we can go and look for crop circles on Google Earth, for example. We can make more accurate measurements from that. From this one, I'm not sure how accurate this is. It is about the expression of the idea that is important for me.
Well, I think those are great points that you made there. Peter, this was really cool. There is one more little tidbit I wanted to talk about before we kind of wrap things up here. If we could just go back to the original picture. I wonder if you could just speak real quick to the quadrant, like how the flattened crop here looks like it's been quadrant off. So,
Yeah.
for example, like here, and where these lines are actually lining up to. Do you want to talk to that real quick before we kind of wrap things up?
What I find the most fascinating about it is that why is this done in this particular example? Because it's it's really uncommon to do. I think when you're going to read into what the design might mean, you have to the four seasons or the four phases of the moon and all that. But from a design point of view, is that this division of four also determines the size of that ring, because these kind of these divisional lines that don't that stands perpendicular to the ones that point to the center. You have the axial lines, and then you have those lines that stand perpendicular to that, and that line defines the size of the ring, also just as the areas do, but it's also a part of that aspect of the design. I hope I make sense now. I'm not sure if I explain myself correctly, but you can see how these lines end with where the connecting ring and it intersects with the satellite.
See that? Okay, very cool. Peter, I think this was a really great one for you and I kind of start off talking about. Like I've told the audience here, and they understand that my obsession with the geometry of the crop circles is well established at this point. I think you've uncovered something really interesting here. And again, just to reiterate for the audience, this is one crop circle that we went over. You've done this many, many times. And so I would hope that we could have you back on and maybe talk about another one because,
I would love. Yeah,
I
sure.
find this endlessly fascinating and I really want to thank
Yeah,
you for your work.
thank you, man. It's a pleasure being here, and it's a great conversation we're having. So I enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to another one in the near future. Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.